Hey everybody, it's Mike from The Mike Wagner Show. If you like The Mike Wagner Show and you want to make your own podcast, well, let me tell you about Anchor. First of all, it's free. Secondly, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can also add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. You can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Hey everybody, it's Mike from The Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at soundcloudstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@soundcloudstudios.com. Mention The Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. SoundCloud Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor, The Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love would be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve Levin enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today. Virgo's Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com on over 40 podcast platforms, heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music. Also heard on HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, Oldies Radio, and a few networks coming soon. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out The Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, baseball gear. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com and check out The Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support The Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, themikewagnershow.com. Make sure you give generously today. We're here with a terrific, multi-talented Irish singer, songwriter, and classically trained clarinetist. Played in orchestras and in numerous ensembles throughout his career. Later took up the saxophone and played with various folk rock acoustic combos and earned a support slot for Donovan. His career getting relaunched in native Ireland, and his latest release features his lifetime of music as a songwriter, musician, and singer, and his path considered, well, raw and organic, and also it tells the vignettes of life, and very profound as well too. And of course, he's got the new release, which is called Convictions. It's also featuring Enemy of Love, Happy Days, in Shining, and also Turning Into You. We'll be playing Mockingbird as well too at the end of the program, which is one of the more popular ones, and also play with one of the more critically acclaimed bands as well too in the 90s. We'll talk about that live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios somewhere in beautiful downtown Ireland. Although he's on holiday, he calls his lovely Ireland home. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Irish singer, songwriter, and classically trained clarinetist, Tony Tyrell. Tony, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
How you doing, Mike? Great to talk to you.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Tony. So you're an Irish singer, songwriter, classically trained clarinetist, playing orchestras and various ensembles. You later took up the saxophone and you play with various folk rock and acoustic combos. You also earned a support slot for Donovan, who's making a comeback in Ireland. You also have been in the band called The Afternoons, which features a homage back in the 1990s, was critically acclaimed. Also, your newest release features your lifetime of music as songwriter, musician, and singer, and also little vignettes of life, like in Mockingbird, and also Conviction. That's the name of the album. Happy Days, and more. And basically, you just have a plethora of experience just under your board. And before getting to all that, Tony, tell us how you first got started.
Well, I started off, as a kid at about 9 years of age, playing recorder. I moved on to clarinet then within a year or so, and then played clarinet for, I still play clarinet, but, played clarinet in various sort of bands and had lessons and did all that sort of stuff, and did the music grades that they have here in the Royal Academy. And I played in concert bands and symphonic wind ensembles, orchestras, big bands. I even played in a German beer tavern band at
Oh
one
my
point.
gosh.
Yeah, and just kind of was kind of half earning a living playing clarinet and sax and various types of things. I from that I started to play sax actually on invitation from a friend who was writing some music for a play that had music in it. It's not a musical, but a play with music in it. And he said, "Would you chance the sax?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do this," because it's a fairly easy transfer from the clarinet. And so I started playing sax, and I found, because I kind of learned the clarinet classically, and I hadn't kind of learned the sax that way, that it kind of opened up a whole new world for me in terms of just kind of playing, kind of improvised playing. And so I loved that. Start playing, with a few guys, kind of in a sort of folk sort of idiom, sometimes with clarinet, sometimes with sax, sometimes with even penny whistles, tin whistle. And then in that sort of context, I began to write songs. I'd always kind of written bits and pieces, poetry and whatever else, but never kind of wrote songs in the sort of full sense of it. But a friend of mine said, give it a go, and gave it a go, started to write songs and never looked back. Originally I was writing with a guitarist, so I was doing melody and lyric, and writing to the sort of chord structures he'd have, we bang out tunes. And that was moved into the afternoons and this band that I played with during the 90s. And then I think when that kind of broke up, I was kind of left at a loss a bit, because I didn't play a chorded instrument. I had a lot of music theory and so on behind me, but I didn't kind of play a piano or a guitar. So I kind of laid off it for a little bit, and then in the early 2000s took up the guitar, with a view to kind of writing songs again. And got involved in a couple of projects there, some with people I played with before, and then I ended up doing a project where I wanted to write songs to sell them. And my intention was I get into writing, because I really just love writing songs, and that's what I wanted to continue to do. And in that context, I was working with a really good producer in Ireland, a guy called Cian Boylan, and he was getting the musicians together for me, so on, and we were going through it, and stuff was sounding great. And then he said, "Look, here's a voice, here's another voice, and none of the voices just sat in my head anymore. I'd always been writing for other people, but none of the voices he gave me kind of rang true." And I said, "Cian, look, I'm gonna have to sing these myself." And he said, "But you don't sing." And I said, "Well, I can sing, but and I said, also, I'm not interested in, I'm not the center here. The song is the center, because I want to sell the song. So it shouldn't really matter too much how I sound, So I sang these songs, which he told me was a mistake. And I actually got a very good response to it, to what I'd done, even though I was intending to do something else with them. And then people started asking me to play and go on radio shows, and I was going, "Oh, okay, I'll try this." And so that was my first entry, almost kind of falling into the singing aspect, because what I was actually interested in was the songwriting aspect. And beyond that, then I did various bits and pieces, but which also involved, I lived in America for about 6 or 7 years, which was kind of to do with my other half of my life, how I now kind of predominantly earn my living. And my wife, during the whole economic collapse, work just brought us to the States. We ended up in Washington, DC for about 6 or 7 years. But over there, I continued to play in little gatherings. We used to have things in our house called kitchen sessions, where people would come, and some people would, recite a poem, some people would sing a song, play a song, whatever. Some people even dance. We had this thing going on, and a community of people. And every time I play one of my songs, somebody would say to me, "Who wrote that song?" And I'd be playing this alongside other songs that I'd love, cover versions and so on. And I kind of went, I really need to do this again. But then there was the whole moving back business, and then there was the whole COVID thing. And, strangely enough, in the middle of the COVID thing, I just had time to think and time to sit down. And also I started messing around with the desktop recording. and actually structuring and polishing songs and layering them and thinking, okay, this is how I'd like this to sound. This is the shape of the song. And from that, then this album came. At that point, I kind of thought, okay, I need to do this now. I need to kind of get off my ass and kind of produce this album, take fuller responsibility for the songwriting thing, get the music out there, and hence the album.
Conviction. That is interesting. I like the way you put it, just, get off your arse and, get to it. So in those kitchen sessions, I thought about COVID. And I said, I guess you guys were kind of a step ahead of the curve. You had the kitchen sessions before the COVID. And I think that was something you just kind of carried over. So
yeah, I think so to some extent, but they were great. I mean, you go in and I think a lot of musicians, unless they're like fully professional musicians or either session musicians or they're kind of star material, that you go in and out of different phases. And sometimes you're very active and you're involved with lots of musicians in different ways. And you always find a way to find musicians, because that's actually the joy of it, the whole collaborative thing. And then sometimes you fall out. And like, for example, when I was in the States, I went to a couple of songwriting workshops with Dar Williams. And they were really good for me as well in terms of kind of getting my head back into that space and writing a lot of new material. And I just kept writing. So, I ended up with this very, vast library of songs. And when I went to, I started kind of doing basic recordings of them. And when I found the producer I wanted to work with, a guy called Tommy McLaughlin, lives in the northwest of Ireland, in Donegal. I started kind of this was during COVID, emailing, speaking to him on the phone, sending him some tunes and say, look, are you interested in doing this? And this guy has worked with a number of artists that I really like myself. A band called Villagers, who are quite big in Europe. They're one of my favorite bands at the moment. In fact, a superb. A woman from, I think she's from Belfast, called Soak, who goes by the name of Soak and Swan. But there's very, he's worked with some really, really good people, and I really like his touch, And so I was in touch with him, and I said, look, would you be interested in doing this project? And he said, fine. And so we exchanged, I gave him a lot of stuff on Dropbox and other ways. And, he kind of would come back to me and say, what about this? What about this? And we whittled it down to about 12 songs that we then decided we do. During the session, the recording, we lost 2 of those, and I brought in 1 more, which is the final track on the album, called Loving Those Steps. So we've 11 songs on the album. So I think, a large part of this was, during COVID, we had restrictions, right? That I couldn't move within 2 kilometers of my home. We just, in Ireland, this is just how strict it was. So life got really, really strange for a while, and you began to think, hold a second, like, if this is the way life could be, and this could go on for a long time, assuming it's going to change, I'm going to change too. And I need to kind of push this out. I need to reach out more, stick my neck out a bit more, I suppose. And, just kind of, go back to that phrase, get off my ass and actually, take a risk. And I think to some extent, this album was a risk. You go through cycles in your life and you do something like this, and people could think it's like a vanity project or something like that. So part of my job here is to ensure that people understand it's not. Like, I'm deadly serious about this. And I have a whole bunch of other songs that I want to follow up with, another album, an album beyond that. So that's my drill, as it were, that I'm into. I'm very, very serious about it. But not serious to the point that I'm hopefully boring.
No, you're fine. You're fine. In fact, I was gonna talk to you more about some releases as well too, and besides some of the artists you mentioned off, like the Villages and more as well too. Who are some other favorite artists, singers, songwriters, especially musicians growing up?
Yeah, well, growing up, I had 2 uncles who were within 10 years of me when I was growing up, right? One on my mother's side, one on my dad's side. So they're youngest siblings. And they kind of fed me anything from, Van Morrison to the Moody Blues, to the Beatles, to, you know, all that sort of stuff, to, you know, Led Zeppelin, I suppose, as well. And I ended up, you know, finding Dylan myself, for example, just through other friends. And he literally is, you know, he's everything to me in terms of songwriting. And the Beatles are kind of everything to me in terms of music, and, you know, to some extent songwriting as well, of course. And so the two of them are the mainstays, but there's loads of stuff because I've listened to and played, you know, a lot of classical music, jazz music, for example. There's all that sort of stuff in my background, or in my ear, as it were. But you know, moving forward, there are a number of artists, anything from like Arcade Fire to, say, Radiohead, as bands, that I absolutely love, because they feel to me like they have to be. They don't feel in any way manufactured. They just feel like a pure expression. In songwriting terms, you know, I'd be kind of fairly much infatuated with the likes of Ron Sexsmith, for example, or Richard Thompson, you know, people like that, who are superb craftspeople, you know, in what they do. They just write brilliant songs all of the time. But then I'd also have a whole other thing, like, you know, on the sort of Pink Floyd side of things, and the David Bowie side of things, and so on, that I you know, absolutely love. And then in my local market, there are loads of just really great artists, you know, like going back to the likes of Villagers, or there's like folk artists like Christy Moore. I'm not sure if you guys would have heard of them. And then there's the sort of more traditional end of things, you know, the likes of the Chieftains and Planksty and all those sort of guys who would have been in my background. And, you know, those people are still producing music, you know, Clonard and, you know, that type of thing. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there, which, you know, I don't mean this in any sort of like we're a special way, but if you come from a very small country, which I do, you know, there are only 5 million of us, we're on a small island hanging off, you know, the west coast of Europe, you tend to look out and absorb a lot because you're in this very small place. So we look outside all of the time. It's just an instinct that we have, both in terms of literature, news, music, whatever it might be. And we consume a huge amount of all of those things, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I'd have a very broad range of reference, I think, in terms of music. And, you know, to go back to the old adage, it's either it's good or it's bad music. So, you know, I would hope I follow the good stuff, you know.
Oh my gosh, that's certainly amazing. Of course, you're involved with one of the projects, which is called The Afternoons, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, along with your album Conviction. First, to listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war-ring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and enjoyed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forrest Riley, and millions. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com on over 40 podcast platforms. Heard in over 100 countries, including HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, Oldies Radio, and more. Take us with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out The Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books, merchandise, and more. I'll support The Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and themikewagnershow.com. Make sure you give generously today. You're here with the multi-talented Irish singer, songwriter, classically trained clarinetist, and saxophone player, Tony Tyrell, here on The Mike Wagner Show. And Tony, before we talk about your latest release, Conviction, which you put your heart and soul in, you talked about the Chieftains and Villagers and along those lines. And one of the bands along the lines that you were involved in was The Afternoons, which you had homage back in the 1990s. And tell us about your time with The Afternoons.
Yeah, great time, kind of, one of those golden times in your life, where you're involved with a group of people. There were six of us in the band. It was kind of, I was playing sax and clarinet. There was a fiddle player in the band, bass guitar, percussionist, female singer. The fiddle player was also a singer, a female singer. So we kind of had this. We would have been contemporaries of the likes of the Corrs and the Cranberries and those sorts of bands at the time. And we were more kind of raggle-taggle than the Corrs, so we were kind of I think they're in maybe a slightly safer space than we would have been in, and not as rocky as the Cranberries. So we were somewhere in the middle of all of that. And great, kind of interesting time, in music in Ireland. Like a lot of bands. I mean, it's like kind of just mushrooming around the place, and people playing. But we pushed and pushed, and we made several demos. We're on sort of like compilation albums and so on. And then we were approached by two independent labels who wanted us to make an album, and we kind of jumped into it. I think in retrospect, I was saying this here off air, that we might have done this a little bit too quickly. It was kind of like, that in those days, making a record was, having the record and having the CD, where, now it's a different sort of process that people go through. So we went and made this with the producer who used to do a lot of our live shows with us. The engineering did a lot of our live shows. And he kind of said, look, we're on a very low budget here, so we need to kind of really strip this back, to otherwise it won't make any sense when it's recorded. And we kind of went with that. And I think, to some extent, we took a bit of the life out of the recorded version of the band, because the live version of the band was really up and at you, really kind of, went for you, and it was very, very powerful sound, I thought. So while I think you stand over the songs, and I think the general sound of the album I really liked as an acoustic album, I think it might have sold us a little bit short. So then we were kind of pushing to sell something that we just had a little bit of a doubt about ourselves. I think that happens to a lot of bands as well. And we carried on, did well. We're nominated for a number of awards, best band and all this sort of stuff. We played on, we're kind of a lot of representative stages, including Meedham. It's this sort of music festival in Cannes in France, with Stiff Little Fingers and another band called The Stunning. We were from Galway at the time. So we had a great time, played all over the place, and loved it. But we never quite got the traction to support six people, moving through a number of years, and, with the economic pressure that all that brings, it's very, very hard to kind of hang there together. Although I must say that the hanging there together for the amount of time that we did is actually quite extraordinary itself. And it's the wonderful thing, I think, about being in a band. But it did teach me lessons in terms of what I've now done, in terms of how I, knowing before you ever go near a studio exactly what it is you want to do. Having that very clear in your head, because you'll always have doubts on the one hand, and then there will be suggestions, and you have to be sure enough to know which are the right suggestions to take, and which are the ones to say, actually, no, I'm fine. This is what I want, So there's a kind of a connection between way back then and now in my own mind. Except now I'm doing it on my own, with people obviously working with other people, but they're not invested in it in the same way as the six of us would have been invested in that project way back then,
That's really interesting too, and it's amazing you guys still communicate, stay in touch, and everything else after all these years. It's like one of the special things about being in a band. Unlike those that rise to the top and get into fights and never speak to each other again, you just have like a couple, and then you remain friends for so many years. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it is, because you share experiences. It's like, it's like running a small business, except, on speed or something. It's just, there's so much happening when you're in the band, and also, for a long period of time, I think with any band, unless you're extremely lucky, you're doing it for nothing, and there's a lot of time involved in the rehearsal and the travel and the turning up and the just being there, and a lot of emotional effort as well, I think, involved in it. So when you expend that level of emotional effort, and you open yourself up to people, I think, and you can be hurt very easily, which is probably why people do end up, kind of fighting with each other. But no, thankfully, I think we kind of, I'm still in contact with all the people in the band, and my friend Sarah, who played the fiddle in the band, came. She's living in the States now. She's from Ohio, but she's living in New York. She was over just recently with her new partner. We had a great time with her. Denise, the singer, I see regularly enough, and I see the percussion player all the time, Kieran, and go to rugby matches and whatever else with him, and have chew the fat. So yeah, it's great. So there's a different vibe doing it alone, in terms of who you might turn to for the decisions that have to be made. And I think I'm probably a better decision maker now, and I kind of can get through that, that process more securely, I suppose, and come out with something at the end. Funny enough, one of the things in my own head I said to myself going into this was that whatever I produced, I would stand over, and I never wanted to apologize for it. So at some level, I really don't care what people think about this album, because I really love it. And I've come to that, to that point. It's actually a nice feeling, you know what I mean? But it's not enough, because if you make something, you clearly want to communicate it to as many people as possible. But that's a different thing to the actual artifact itself. I really like what I've done, and I'm really happy with that and committed to it. And so I'm prepared to put in whatever amount of work now in order for more people to hear it. But behind all of that, there's a certain satisfaction that, yeah, I did that. I think this is quality work, and I'm happy that I got there,
Mm-hmm. And very happy indeed, along with Mockingbird to be released next month. And as well, we'll be playing at the end of the broadcast. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by our official sponsor, The Mike Wagner Show, international war-ring author Mia Molson's The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with the multi-talented Irish singer-songwriter Tony Tyrell after this time out. We're back with multi-talented Irish singer-songwriter Tony Tyrell here on the Mike Wagner Show with his latest release, Conviction. And, let's talk more about that. You've got Enemy of Love. You've got also Shining as well, Happy Days, and you got After the Day as well, or Another Day. And tell us more about those.
Yeah, I think there's a range of different style of songs on the album. The sort of Happy Days song is kind of more in the sort of country folk idiom. It's the only song that has a fiddle on it. Actually, the fiddle is on that track, and it's in a sort of a 3/4, well, maybe more 6/8, but sort of has that sort of waltz type feel to it. And a song I wrote, a while back, and had to kind of polish then for the album. And it to me, it's kind of largely about the relationship between the old and the new, what we call progress sometimes, and sometimes what we leave behind. So that I kind of like that song. It's a well written, kind of solid song. Moving on to something like Shining, for example, that is probably a more rocky type of song, more modern alternative rock kind of feel of it, more angst-driven type song. And funny enough, more a song that was more immediate. It just kind of came out as it was, whereas, would have wanted to do a lot more work with. It just came out as it was. I was messing around with a descending bass line pattern, and the song just came out. And it's kind of, it's kind of like a bit of me having a conversation with myself in my head, and I'm not quite sure what it is about, but I really like it. I always like those, it's the likes of, say, Dear Prudence or While My Guitar Gently Weeps, those sort of, those step down type of songs. I just really love that feel of a song. So I think a lot of the sort of what I'm trying to do in the album is create a mood, with the various songs. Something like Another Day, which was I think that was the second single from the album, is a more narrative-driven song, and it's much more in a sort of I wouldn't say pop, but more mainstream song. And that was a challenge for me, in that I was driving my car one day, stopped at a traffic light. There was a car pulled up beside me. There was a girl in the car, and she was very upset. and she also had this little dangly giraffe from her rear view mirror.
Hmm.
And the two of those things just struck me, stayed with me. And I kind of thought I have to write a song about this girl. And so I wanted to write a song that was more a story, you know, a more a direct story, and to control the song in the way that a lot of very good songwriters do, the likes of some Ron Sexsmith, for example, Elvis Costello, Paul McCartney, those sort of people that have this great command of, you know, bringing you from point A to point Z, and you don't really even know you've gone there, because it's, you know, to do that in 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever, is, you know, it's quite a task, you know, to actually have a whole story there. So that was a much more longer slog, you know, trying to craft a song like that. But, you know, I loved doing it, and I hope I told the story well. And then Mockingbird is a sort of a more in your face, you know, kind of more brash song that's about a falling out that I had with a very good friend of mine. And, you know, had lots of consequences for me, for him, and for a lot of different friends, because our lives were intertwined. So it's a kind of very personal song, and hopefully it comes across like that. You know, it's you know, there's regret in it, there's anger in it, there's betrayal in it, there's all those things in it. And to me, it kind of has a sort of inevitability about it. It's almost like a juggernaut, you know, from start to finish. It just charges along. So yeah, so there's some of the songs and the different sorts of flavors that I think are in there on the album, which I think is very much trying to focus on the songs rather than any one given sound. Although hopefully it holds together in terms of it's basically a 4-piece band and my voice. You know, that's what the thing is built around. So there is an identity there, but I don't think everything sounds the same.
And that's very interesting as well, too. And where can we find Conviction at, especially with the upcoming single Mockingbird and more? Where can we find Conviction and all your works at?
Yeah, so you'll find all of that on Spotify, Tony Tyrell, and, you know, on Spotify, on Apple Music, on YouTube, on, you know, I don't know, you guys use Instagram and so on. So it's basically everywhere, as well as my own website, which is tonytyrellmusic.com. So, you know, all of the material will be on there, as well as I have a blog on there people can read and so on. And that's what I'd be building on as I move along. So the platforms are great, but they're a little impersonal, I think. So I think, you know, there's probably more stuff I can do through my own site that, you know, people want to get a sense of who I am or how I see the music and so on, that they can, you know, they can tune in better there.
We will certainly check that out as well, too. We're here with Irish singer, songwriter, multi-talented Tony Tyrell here on the Mike Wagner Show with Conviction. And just a few more things, Tony. What else can we expect from you in 2022 and beyond?
Okay, well, I think, you know, I'm going to have to tour the album with a band, you know, so playing acoustically is one thing, but with a band is another thing in terms of both cost and organization. So that's something I'm kind of getting my head around and putting that together. I'd love to get over to the States, you know, I know a lot of people through various means who are involved in music. So maybe even go over there, recruit a band and play some sort of a circuit there. I think the music people would like it there, you know, in terms of just the sort of the type of music it is. So that's that. I'm also writing some new material and working on some older stuff, because what I really want to do is I want to get traction for this album. So I have a lot of work to put in to get feedback that says to me, hey, Tony, there's enough people like this stuff for you to do it again. All right. So that's the ambition. It isn't world domination or anything else. It's enough, you know, enough feedback from out there to say, you know, this is appreciated. And there's enough coming back to me, both in terms of good vibes as well as some sort of economic return that says, yeah, you know, Tony, go ahead, do this again, and I'll do it again. Because that's really what I want to do, you know, is the next. I think you talk to so many people, Mike, that all you really want to do is the next thing, you know, and you know, but you have to take care of the current thing as well. And, you know, opportunities like this are obviously fantastic for somebody like me. So I really appreciate you know, having me on the show.
And there's always good things having what's coming up next and everything else. You know, there's always more anticipation, and what you got is really good as well, too. And we're certainly looking forward to what you have. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
In my career in music, well, I think I said this to you before. I think it has to be Bob Dylan. You know, I just find him extraordinary. You know that he's done so much extraordinary work over such a long period of time. He's never ever been put in a box. You know, he resists it. You know, with all of his being. He's covered so much territory. You know, politics, religion, his personal life, all that sort of stuff, and come back again with these extraordinary, you know, this extraordinary work at the end of his career, or what appears to be the end of his career, because you never know. You know, it's the consistency, you know, of the art that for me is phenomenal. You know, that I was hooked on him. I heard The Times They Are Changing was actually Desire was the first album I heard, and then The Times They Are Changing. Then I just start gathering everything, and you know, listening to it, and then keeping abreast of it, as you know. So I can almost mark out periods of my life, you know, as I hear all of these different albums, and you know, somebody of that stature, you can forgive almost anything because of just the depth that he has there, you know, because some of the stuff hasn't been great, but the vast majority of it is extraordinary. And so, yeah, I think that would be the biggest influence by far, in terms of just plowing your own furrow, you know. I wish I had this guts, you know, and that's kind of part of what I'm tapping into, I would hope, is like saying, well, you know, just do your own thing, because that's all you can do, you know, and stand over it. And so that's what I'm hoping to do.
And certainly doing a good job at that. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
I think it's that, you know, is kind of apply yourself to your craft, your art, have a very strong idea of what it is that you want to do, and then take the advice that's merited. You know, there's always good advice, but you do need to know what you want, and because you can get thrown all over the place, I think, both in terms of where you think you're going, but also then in terms of the actual sound you make. So I think, you know, do what feels right, because then you won't be regretting it. And also, I think, be realistic in your ambitions. You know, it's not all about, you know, stardom and all the rest of it. It's about music, and you know, at the end of the day. And yes, music has to be communicated. We don't all need millions of followers. You know, you can survive on a lot less if they're the right followers. And you know, and just apply yourself in that way. I think that's where you get the satisfaction comes from, is the music, meeting people who like the music, you know, whatever numbers of people that happen to be, talking about music to people like you, and you know, having these sorts of opportunities is amazing. You know, it's just great, and just do it. I've said to other people, Mike, that my abiding thing in my mind now is action reaction. You know, it's almost like physics. You know, that I keep taking action to support this album. There will be some form of reaction. I have no idea what that will be. You know, it can take many different forms, and I really don't mind at a certain level. You know, I just keep pushing it, and the world will give back something to me. And it may be opportunities like this. It may be to work with somebody else. It may be to write for somebody else, or it may be to record another album. But whatever the hell it is, you know, I'm going to grab it, you know, because that's where the music will be bringing me.
And certainly as well, too, just great advice as well. And once again, with a singer, songwriter, multi-talented from Ireland, Tony Tyrell, here on the Mike Wagner Show with Convicting. Already on Spotify with the soon to be released Mockingbird. Tony, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Make sure you keep us up to date, keep in touch. We'd love to have you back. We wish you all the best. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Or can people purchase or check out your music?
Okay, so I'm on all of the platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, and so on. But my own website is tonytyrellmusic.com, and you'll get a better feel for me. The music will be on there. You can buy the CD and all that sort of stuff there, as well as all the streaming thing. So yeah, all the usual places: YouTube, Spotify, etc. And I'm based in Ireland, so we're playing. It's going to be over here for the next while, but hopefully I'll get over to you guys soon as well.
Sounds good as well. That's a plan. Once again, Tony, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to having you soon. Make sure you keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back. We wish you all the best. And Tony, you've got a great future ahead of you.
Thank you, Mike. Fantastic. You're a star.